And with that being said, we're going to transition to our final review, a recap of the most recent episode of the Game of Thrones prequel series, House of the Dragon. Episode 3 just premiered this past week. It's entitled The Burning Mill. And so we are quickly approaching the halfway point of the season. Obviously, episodes 1 and 2 had some very, very shocking events, very shocking material. I think some of the more shocking elements of what we've seen out of this series thus far. And we're sort of in the phase of an impending war. The war is not kicked off yet, but all of the chess pieces are starting to move into place for this impending war that's about to happen between the blacks and the greens in the show. But episode 3 just premiered. We got a chance to check it out. We're going to talk about all the details. But before we do, we're going to start with some general big picture thoughts. So what did you think about this episode of The House of the Dragon?
Another good episode in the books. There's so much happening narratively constantly in this show that is it will always be, I think, impressive to juggle. Game of Thrones is the same way. George R. R. Martin is just really good of like having all these characters and for everything to both be separate and connected, and it's just very impressive. But I think this episode, it's doing a lot. It's doing a lot thematically, and I think it's continuing to hammer along those the themes that I really like. That small folk theme that I think is really cool, that I think we'll continue to see throughout the season. But this episode contains, I think, one of the biggest one of the biggest things to happen, I'd say, maybe even since like the first episode, in terms of where we're going and where we're headed, of what's about to go down. I think in this story, they do something that I say that I think is going to have crazy repercussions. And now it's time for some of that dust to settle, and for kind of the opposite to happen directly after that. It's about to go down, but it's obviously it's wartime in the world of the House of the Dragon, and all the pieces are coming into play. So it's been another really good episode. I love everything they did, and I can't wait to see more, man.
Yeah, this week's episode of House of the Dragon I thought was really, really good. Certainly more quieter than the first 2 episodes. The first one has just a really shocking finale. The second episode is dealing with the fallout and the aftermath. This is where we kind of truly set in and settle in with this season, and start to just re-examine the placement of characters and where they are. And just, again, I think how narratively the momentum continues to push everybody towards this impending war, where it feels like certain people don't want this to happen. It's like everybody's asking that question, like, yo, like, we realize where this is going, right? We realize, like, it's about to get bad. Can we exhaust every option to not get there before we do eventually get there? But then on the other side of that, you have people actively pushing for it. You have people that are trying to activate the nuclear options that are available. And I just love that we have all of those moments to examine those small council meetings, to see that discourse. We have those moments to see the misunderstandings and to really pick apart just like where everybody stands, because now we've reached a place in this series and in this story where the toothpaste is out of the tube and there's no putting it back. That's really what it's all boiled down to. But there's a last ditch effort on the part of quite a few characters here to say, like, well, damn, I kind of don't want to go to war. Can we not do that? And can we figure out a way to, like, maybe figure out a way backwards instead of, moving forward with something that's going to probably kill thousands, if not millions of people, possibly. It's going to be that destructive. So I just love that this episode took all the time to focus on that. And once again, all the side characters, all the people who have ulterior motives, who have their own political motivations, they're also being put in positions that are going to ultimately affect and influence the stuff, because the main people at play that are ultimately responsible for whether or not this moves forward, we know that they don't have the real power. The real power are the people around them. The real power, exactly. The real power comes from those, beside the throne, beside, the kings and the conquerors and the queens. It's the people that are doing some of the dirtier work, in more of an underhanded way, that continue to sort of shape the events of how things progress and move forward. So I thought that, just like from a dialogue perspective and from just from a screenwriting perspective, they really, really effectively hammered that home this week's episode. We kind of needed that reset to just examine all of those conversations that would happen before a war would go down. Like, even in modern society, like, there's thousands of hours of conversation that would have to occur before the declaration of war occurs, right? So we're sort of in that place where we're taking the time to set that stage and to make sure that every option is exhausted before we ultimately get to what's going to be something that's going to be truly devastating for all of Westeros. But folks, with all of that said, If you've not seen the most recent episode of House of the Dragon, definitely go check that out on HBO and finish out the rest of our conversation. And let's just start at really the big event of this episode. Let's start at the end because it's pretty significant in what happens here. Ultimately, Rhaenyra, after many things occur in this episode, she's trying to make a last ditch effort. She wants to go visit Alicent in King's Landing. She's like, look, I need to go talk to her. We got to have a conversation. We haven't talked in quite a long time, but I got to figure something out because so much has happened here. So much blood has already been shed. Children have been killed and lost. Like, it's just gotten truly dark. And so Rhaenyra wants to figure out a way to get to King's Landing to go talk to her and to talk about, you know, their father, you know, her father Viserys, and just like everything that happened, and what can we do to maybe pull back from this? Like, what can still be done to try to basically just avert this war entirely. And so she basically disguises herself as a nun in King's Landing, as a septa, with the help of Mysaria. And she infiltrates King's Landing. She's able to infiltrate the church that Alicent is at. And she speaks with Alicent. She's able to find her. And really the concluding element of this conversation is that war cannot be avoided. Like, this is happening. There's nothing that can be done. And I think a part of me thought, well, is this just like resilience and reluctance from the part of Alicent just not wanting to listen to Rhaenyra? Or does she just realize that control has been completely removed from her and other powers that be, and it's just gotten so big and just so uncontrollable that there's really nothing that can be done can stop this? And we also find out in this conversation about Viserys's, you know, sort of final words, what he truly said in that moment when he declared who was going to be his heir. And Alicent uses the words of the prophecy for Aegon the Conqueror, and that sets off something in Rhaenyra. Like, wait a second, you're talking about the Song of Ice and Ice and Fire? Like, that's what you mean? She remembers and realizes, like, this prophecy has already been set in motion, because she knows what the prophecy is. She knows that Viserys told that to her years and years ago, and so she's like, wait, there's a big misunderstanding here. I think that this is all wrong. Aegon should not be there right now. And so this all happens, and it's a pretty pivotal moment for the characters. But again, by the end of it, Alicent basically reinforces that there's no way back. There's no mistakes that have been made. There's no way back. This is what it is. It is going to happen. How did you feel about that? Because it was a pretty significant bomb that they dropped at the end of the episode to just showcase, like, yeah, there's work trying to be done here to try to, you know, make sure that this doesn't go down in the way that it goes down, and there's misunderstandings here, but a lot of people involved in this particular conflict are just so far removed and so far gone and so deep into it that there's not a way back yet.
Yeah, there's so much here, man. But what I think this season up until this point does so good at doing, they're really good at getting us to understand that our characters are now starting to see how silly all of this is. Like, they're all starting to see, like, all right, this war is ridiculous. Rhaenys is talking to Rhaenyra like, I know you're angry, but this is kind of getting out of hand. Like, there's too much happening. When Rhaenyra and Alicent start talking, and all of this comes to light, and Alicent is like, yeah, it's too far off the hinges, but there's nothing I can do about it anymore. It's now above me. It's kind of too late. And a lot of what she says in that moment, I thought about it. In that moment, I'm like, no, you can absolutely do something. But in the grand scheme of things, I thought about it, and she kind of can. She's kind of right in that moment. Everyone is off the hinges right now. She goes, you know who Aegon is. You're right. We do know who Aegon is. He's not going to care about anything that anyone has to say. What are they going to do? Come out, have a big meeting, and say, all right, everybody, we had a big misunderstanding. Aegon's not supposed to be the king. My bad. Wrong Aegon, y'all. That's not what he said. It was Rhaenyra all along, and everybody needs to get along. Rhaenyra, come on, move in, baby girl. Aegon, you got to step down. That's not going to happen. And I think Alicent knows that. But also, I think it flips Alicent's world upside down, because she did say something that I really liked, where she was saying, a lot of us have been on Team Black this entire time. We were for Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra has been doing what she thought was right. But in a lot of ways, Alicent has been kind of doing that same thing too. She just has kind of been acting off of what she thought was right. She really thought Viserys was talking about Aegon, her son. That's kind of real to a degree, you know what I'm saying? And she has been acting off of that. And she's like, I will never I've always, sought to act off the truth. I don't know the exact word she said, but she's always sought to act off the truth. And so it becomes crazy for Allison too, because it's like, damn, I done all this shit. And I kind of low key might have been wrong about what happened, but now it's out of my hands. And I think that devastates her as well. It devastates both of them because Rhaenyra, she gets there, she's devastated because she thinks, man, maybe there's a possibility of Viserys did not say my name. But now it's kind of turned on Allison, and now her world is shattered. So it's crazy. I can't even imagine like mentally what Allison's about to go through. Damn near Rhaenyra either, where Rhaenyra has now almost doubled down, like, oh shit, I am supposed to have this thing. But now it's out of also kind of out of my hands now too. Damon's on the loose, Aemon's on the loose. It's too much going on. So it was my favorite part of the episode just because of, again, the repercussions it's going to have on both of those characters' psyche, but also like how we've been talking about how out of control these two characters are at the same time. It's crazy, man.
First couple quick things I want to point out. I need King's Landing and Dragonstone to up their reinforcements. The fact that people can just walk in willy-nilly and sneak in so quickly and easily is just, so easy. It's beyond me. Last week, Ark sneaks into Dragonstone unnoticed. I can go with that. He is a twin. There's a way to get around that. But the fact that Rhaenyra could just dress up as this nun and just walk through the streets, like, it took her a while to get through the streets to get to the Sept to meet Alice. And it's just like, yo, y'all got to get the reinforcements back, like really, really locked down. Cause like we're in the midst of a possible war. You think shit would be increasingly secure at the gates, but apparently they're not. Also, this is what the fuck happens when you keep naming people the same thing. If we just switch names occasionally, we would not even have to deal with this. Why is Aegon the Second the name of this fucking kid? Like, stop that. Like, we know that it's about Aegon the Conqueror, and this is a mix-up, but we could avoid this if we just give people unique names. Like, we wouldn't even be here. Be that as it may, this is devastating. This is crazy, and it's a wonderful, wonderful moment. Just so well acted between Emma Darcy and Olivia Cook here. They just did a phenomenal job just like showcasing how far things have gotten and just reinforcing again, I think what we've been talking about for a number of weeks here, the fact that these two women who have a lot of power in this universe and women in general in this show and in this universe, at least at this time, they don't want this bloodshed. They don't want this war. You know, there's even that moment where Rhaenyra says it to Alicent that men seek blood. I know you don't have that same desire within you. And we see that constantly where the men in the show are bloodthirsty. They do want revenge. That's clearly Aegon's whole MO at this point. Right. I don't fuck dignity. I want revenge. Even Daemon, he is thirsty after blood. All of these people, all of these men in this world, they are truly the deciding factors as to why things have gotten so viciously violent and there is a war that's about to occur. Whereas the women largely are just not for that. They want to seek out ways to try to figure this all out and just maybe talk a little bit more. And there are just misunderstandings too. There's just miscommunication and misunderstandings. I mean, imagine if the fucking internet existed back here. Like all of this could be averted easily. Like if we just had easier lines of communication. We didn't have to depend on ravens. I mean, all of this stuff could just be quick cell phone. Like so much stuff could be averted. But the fact that like, yeah, Raven's gonna take a week, bro. You know how much happens in a week in this world? So much shit happens. Like that Raven's not gonna get there quick enough. And so it just reinforces, I think, the womanhood of these characters wanting to protect and keep everything peaceful as much as possible. It's a really, really strong element to the show that they continue to reinforce throughout the episodes. But even that being said, even though they truly deep down don't want the stuff to go down in the way that it looks like it will, it's unwieldy. It's just so unwieldy now. Again, that toothpaste cannot be put back in the tube. Like we're talking about 2 kids that have been killed. You know, that is means for war in this particular world. That is exactly what you would fight for, and you would send thousands of soldiers to their death for. So it's just a knockout moment of the episode that I think it's the signal that, you know, there is no going back. This is absolutely going to go down. There's no turning back. And also, you know, many of the people who would be involved potentially in these conversations are just lost. Like you said, Daemon is just gone. He's doing his own thing now. Aemon is like just depressed in a brothel. Like he can't even wake up and live a normal life. He's just curled up in the fetal position underneath this woman that he's sleeping with. It's kind of crazy right now where people have ended up so quickly. But I thought it was just a tremendous way to just reinforce that idea. Speaking of Damon, we should talk about him because after the blow up that he had with Rhaenyra last week, the argument that they had, he essentially leaves Dragonstone. He goes on his own little adventure. He decides to go to Harrenhal because he basically arrives there, even though Kristen Cole is like cooking up his own plans. Damon arrives there first, and he finds that the person who's inherited the castle, the Castellan, basically pledges his allegiance to Damon in that moment. But there's also some really spooky shit going on here at Harrenhal, which has
Mm-hmm.
largely been sort of noted in this world and in this universe as being kind of a spooky, haunted place. Like weird shit goes down here, which is why there's nobody there. Like you just don't go to Harrenhal. And I think we see why, because it's not quite clear exactly what's going on here, whether it's a vision or if it's a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
But some strange shit starts happening. Damon, he's looking at the door to this bedroom he's sleeping in, and it's being pushed as if somebody's trying to enter. There's also a sword that's on the door blocking from somebody entering, but it's not his sword. So somehow a sword got there. When he opens up the door, there's nobody on the other side, although he heard pushing and screaming. And then shortly thereafter, he walks throughout the castle, and it appears that he sees a vision of a young Rhaenyra. Millie Alcock returns to portray Rhaenyra in
Yeah.
this episode, and she is sewing back on the head of the dead son of Aegon, who we've already seen in the previous two episodes, the son that was slaughtered at the hands of Blood and Cheese. She is sewing back on the head of that young boy, and I believe she says something to the effect of, "I'm always here to clean up your mess, Damon," which again sort of reinforces her position in his life and her relationship towards him. What did you think about just this whole segment of the episode? Because it got really spooky, really creepy. There's rain. There's so much happening, and it's very isolated for Damon as well because
Mm-hmm.
he's not leaning on Rhaenyra anymore. He doesn't really have anybody around him. But then also possibly the implications for the allegiance that he's able to get from the folks at Harrenhal and perhaps how that might influence the war.
Wow, what a moment in the episode, man. Actually remind me of like a Dark Souls game. You go into them castles, it be dark. You don't know what the hell's around the corner. It was crazy kind of seeing it. But it also reminded me of the episode of X-Men 97 with when the mansion was going crazy and everybody seeing visions of like things they don't want to see. And I think Damon is kind of going, through something similar in this moment where he is legit having nightmares. That's a nightmare to see a young Rhaenyra, a young Millie Alcock stitching together this head of this kid that you got that you eventually got killed. And I think he does feel, as much as we do always, I think, speak to how much blood Damon wants, and blood is blood. I think he does feel some type of way, right, about accidentally causing the death of the child, or else I don't think this would be a nightmare for him. It would just be like, I did that. Instead, it's like, no, this thing is kind of haunting him. And there's even a moment where Alice Rivers appears on the outside of the castle, and she's like, "You will die in this place." And Damon Loki he doesn't look like, hell no, I ain't dying in here. He almost is like, yeah, I will die in this place. And so it's just very interesting to see, I think, what Damon is going through. Like you said, there's nobody around him, and he is kind of in isolation. This is a huge solo mission. It's just him and his dragon. That's it. That's all he has next to him right now. There's nobody to call to right now. There's nobody to really reinforce him. And so I thought it was a very effective scene because I think we very rarely do we see like a more guilty side of Damon or a guilty conscious side of Damon. Again, of course, this Harrenhal has a lot going on within it itself. This whole place is creepy as hell. Like everybody probably has nightmares in here. But I think to see Damon kind of in somewhat of a vulnerable position that we barely get to see him as was, again, I think, very effective.
First of all, the production design, the CGI that they did for Harrenhal here, extraordinary. It just looks so magnificent. It looks so scary, so creepy, so gothic, and so spooky.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about Lord of the Rings, which has a lot of castles
Yeah,
that you don't
that's a
go
good one
into
too.
when they're fucking
Mm-hmm.
uninhabited. Like, just don't go there, bro. Anytime you see Gandalf going to like the ruins of a castle, typically there's some
Mm-hmm.
evil shit lurking around the corner there. And that's the exact same vibe that I got here. And it's raining and all of this stuff is going down. And I just thought that the way that they brought this to life, the way that it looks was just, it was beautiful. It's one of the best looking things that I think that they've done in the show. thus
Yeah.
far, really just showcasing the scale of what's possible with this particular series and just the budget that they're afforded. And then secondly, I guess from a more thematic perspective, look, if we get like the majority of the season where Damon is just at this castle and he's slowly going crazy, I am here for that. I would love
I'm
that.
down.
That sounds like extraordinary material to me because there's so much going on up in his head, so much fucked up shit that he's done and that has been done to him. Let's unpack all of that. Let's open up those closets of all those skeletons and demons, because this is only like the first ball to drop when he sees the young Rhaenyra sewing on Jaehaerys's head like that. That was crazy enough, but Damon has committed a lot of atrocious things, and so what else is going to pop up? I'm totally here for it. Give us like a Castaway version of Damon at Harrenhal. Like I'm here for it. And then I guess just the last thing, with him being here and potentially the chess piece of what it could mean for the war. I mean, look, the whole place is only really inhabited by one person, Sir Simon Strong, who's Larys's great uncle. He's kind of the only family member of that family that's remained here. And he's like, I don't care about this political shit. Like, I don't care. You can have this castle, do whatever you will with it. But this might be a really effective tool for the fight. Like the fact that Damon is in possession of an entire castle. Like what could that mean for defensive forces? What could that mean for regrouping? What could that mean for, doing things in secret away from Dragonstone, which everybody sort of knows about at this point, to this Harrenhal place, which nobody wants to go to. Like nobody wants anything to do with that. But that could be a key deciding factor in how things are utilized again throughout the impending war. But as I said off rip, this is historically known in Game of Thrones lore as just like a haunted place, where people go and sort of lose their minds. I just wonder if that can be sort of effectively used at some point as a way to gain an advantage over the Greens. I want to quickly mention also Larys and Masera, who similar characters in some respects because they have ascended to very high levels in a quick amount of time. On one hand, Masera has gained the trust of Rhaenyra. She's basically been afforded the opportunity to work alongside her now and to counsel her, and she's also responsible for Rhaenyra getting into King's Landing to infiltrate the Sept in order to speak to Alicent at the end of the episode. But we also see Larys once again maneuvering, manipulating the situations and the scenarios, again to appeal to his ulterior motives, and essentially Aegon is like, oh yeah, Larys, like I like you. You're gonna be on my council. You're gonna work for me. And so Masera becomes Rhaenyra's advisor, but Larys becomes the master of whisperers. That they both get promotions at the same time in this episode, and they feel distinctly different. But I think more so with Larys, he's obviously a very underhanded, sneaky, cannot be trusted type of character, and he's manipulating Aegon. It's just so clear to see like Aegon has no clue what this guy is really, really about, and the fact that like he's pulling his fucking strings at this point. How did you feel about just sort of those two opposing forces who have, again, shaped a lot of what's occurred so far, sort of ascending to these two different positions on the two opposing sides of the conflict?
Miss Area is low-key pretty powerful with what she's able to do. Apparently, she can sneak anybody into anything. Like you said, there's a lack of security everywhere. Part of it is because Miss Area is just, I guess she just know people. She's just that good.
She be in them streets. She
be in them streets. She's just good at knowing how to infiltrate these places. So I think she's a well welcomed ally to Rhaenyra, especially in how messy this whole thing is about to get. So I think it makes sense completely that she would get kind of upgraded to a new position in that way. Larys, man, what a scary dude. And I think the exit of Otto makes Larys even scarier because Otto was an intellectual. Otto could see through and at least try to protect his grandson through all the crazy political stuff that was going down. He would see through it and see that maybe Larys is manipulating Aegon, but without Otto there, without that filter, oh man, Larys is just about to have his way with the very angry king as well. He's not just young, he's not just inexperienced, but he's emotional right now, and he's getting drunk all over the place. And I think Larys is again about to take advantage of all of that because again, there's no longer any protection for Aegon in what his counsel is. So him getting promoted, man, it's scary, but in terms of the fun that is to be had in Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, I'm kind of curious to see what Laris is about to do. I can't lie to you.
Like Laris killed his entire family last season. Like that's the type of guy we're talking about. He just murdered his family without compunction. He just didn't give a fuck. He's like, oh well,
Fire
they got to go. Burn them all. And so we know
in a
what
cold place.
we know, yeah, we know exactly what he's capable of. But also like Aegon, it's very reflective of the type of king that he is, because Aegon, he yells a lot, he gets angry a lot. He very much is bloodthirsty as well. He wants war, but also his council, the people around him, they know that he's not really a threat. There's that whole moment when he's having the council meeting. He's like, I can be as fearful on a dragon as anybody can, as Aemon can. And they all are like, can you, bro? I don't know about that. When nobody says anything, but all of the looks on their faces are like, nah, nigga, you cannot be. You can.
Aemon? Are we talking about the same
like
person?
you ain't nowhere near that level. And a small part of me wonders if Aegon sort of internalized that. But yeah, Laris is man, he's scary. He's scary because he's just so quiet. He is the master of whispers. And we know, like, the people with the most knowledge in this world always have the advantage. When they talk to everybody on the streets, when they know exactly how the people are feeling in their respective, communities and countries, King's Landing or wherever the case may be, and they can leverage that and they can use that to their advantage, and they can just, influence and infiltrate things behind the scenes. Yeah, that's where it gets crazy. That's where shit really pops off, and that's where the true power lies. Speaking of Aegon and Aemon, I do want to quickly touch on their moment. Aegon, he gets drunk. He's with some people. He goes down to the brothel that Aemon has been frequenting. Which, by the way, in this episode, they're going fucking wild in that brothel. I mean,
yeah,
there's a whole never thought I would see this on TV. There's a whole scene of like a woman blowing off a man, like just right in front of our faces, like that just happens. I'm like, I didn't realize we could do that anymore.
Borderline porn. Yep. Yeah. Now we're entering porn.
I'm like, is this not NC-17 these days? Like, what where's the line now? Because that was one thing I thought was strictly prohibited from being like just classified as porn. But here we are. They figured out a way to put that in. But Aegon, he finds his brother in this brothel and he taunts him. He sees Aemon laid up, with the woman that he's been sleeping with, and he just kind of makes fun of him and taunts him. And we know that Aemon has been sort of dealing with guilt and some depressive tendencies, knowing that he was responsible for a lot of this, really moving forward in the way that he does. Aemon goes full frontal in the episode for whatever reason, like stands on top of the bed butt naked. Like, he doesn't just get out the bed, he stands on top of the bed and then gets off the bed. I wonder
like what?
I think I might just do that from now on. Like, when I wake up, I'm gonna just stand on top of the bed and then get off the bed, just full pose right in the morning. That was kind of a funny moment. But any thoughts on just like seeing this somewhat brotherly banter between the two? They're not like outright aggressive and divisive towards each other, not like outright mean in all those ways, but there's definitely like some underlying tension there. And I think Aemon has obviously harbored a lot of ill feelings from his younger childhood as well, because he was an outcast. He wasn't looked at the same way as his siblings were, and we're seeing that sort of manifest in these small moments.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. He's always kind of been that outcast, and even in this moment, I think he's used to getting picked on. The confidence he exhibits in that moment, I know we're making fun of it, but he's still like, shit, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I was in there fucking with my hoe, you know what I'm saying? I was in there doing what I needed to do. What you mean? I'm cool. He said, y'all can have her if y'all want, and I think he is going through all of that stuff, but like I think he is so used to getting picked on, and I think it really just ties to what we literally was just talking about. They don't believe that he's as frightening as Aemon is. They don't believe and now when he goes to torment Aemon, it's kind of, that's why he's tormenting him. He's trying to make him feel small, because in the moment where Aemon wasn't present, everybody doesn't think that he's not as again as intimidating as Aemon is. Everyone's like, yeah. So now he's trying to, that's his get back. He's trying to get his lick back, and I don't think it's working as well as he thinks he is. But he's drunk and he doesn't care, and that's his way of letting off steam, as to make fun of his brother, because that's what he's always done. And so it was a funny moment. But yeah, like you said, the brothel was cracking. Apparently, there's a half brother in there.
Yeah, that's another thing,
I was
right?
like, whoa, that's huge. It was going down. I was like, wait. We talked about this at one point. There was a bastard child out there somewhere, and now it's all kind of coming full circle, man. It's very interesting.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Kristen Cole real quick. Who's sporting a new haircut in this episode. I guess this is like his new douchebag dick bag era, so he has an appropriate haircut to match. Because what a fucking atrocious haircut! It makes me hate him even more. It's like you shortened your hair now. Like now there's even less to like about. It's something about the longer hair where it's like I can kind of get, but it feels like more of a good guy. But when he cuts his hair, it's like, yeah, you're a bad guy now for sure. But we see like, now he has these new responsibilities. He's the hand of the king now.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kristen Cole is in a position where like the people around him are just not really they're not really rallying behind him maybe like he thought that they would.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a coach who doesn't he hasn't won over the locker room yet. He just entered into
Yeah.
the team dynamic. He has to prove himself, but nobody really actually believes that he can lead the squad and lead the team. But ultimately he's been pretty lax since this whole situation. But he decides to make a suggestion to lead an army himself into the Riverlands. He tells this to Aegon because they're trying to strategize about next moves. And he feels like this is going to be an area that's going to be very key to the war. Allison is like, no, that shit is dumb. I don't think you should do that. But Aegon, he likes it. He's like, yep, to war. Like, let's do it. And so basically, Kristen goes out, and accompanying him is Allison's older brother, Sir
Mm-hmm.
Gawain Hightower.
Mm-hmm.
What a name, Gawain. Not Dwayne,
Dwayne.
not Wayne, Gawain.
Dwayne.
Hightower, who decides to go with him, and we haven't seen this character since the series premiere of this show.
That's crazy.
I'm pretty sure he was recasted here because he was mostly masked up in the series premiere when he was
Mm-hmm.
jousting with Damon. But he does return
Mm-hmm.
here. He's basically, a little upset that his father ended up losing the hand of the king position to Cole, but he remains loyal to the king at the end of the day. And so they decide to roll together out into this area. And before long, on this mission, one of Damon's daughters finds them. I believe it was Bela who finds
It's
them.
Bayla.
It was Bela
Mm-hmm.
because Rhaenyra sends Bela on a mission, like, accompany your younger siblings to safety because we need to preserve the family as much as possible. And she takes the dragon, and she ultimately comes into contact with Kristen. She recognizes him almost immediately and probably could have killed them, probably could have taken them out easily, maybe just ended this whole
She
fucking
wanted
thing
to.
in one fell swoop. Doesn't decide to do so because that is, I think that would clearly go against the wishes of her mother and what the family has decided. But how did you feel about just sort of those movements? What Bela had to do, because she also, I think, was reluctant in that moment to do what she had to do, what Rhaenyra wanted her to do. And then on the other side of that, just sort of, Kristen's movements, what he was trying to achieve here, and I guess sort of the chess pieces that he's trying to move into place to make himself more appealing to the king and to try to fulfill his obligations as the hand.
Kristen, oh Kristen. It I think, this universe is also interesting because as messy as it gets, also people are smarter, I think, than we give them credit for sometimes, because everybody seeing Kristen get promoted and was just like, I mean, I guess, you know what I mean? Like you said, nobody's really rallying behind him, but he is, again, supposed to be a very well accomplished knight. But I think there's also whispers in the wall about what this nigga has going on. Like, I'm sure, people have inklings about what this dude has been doing. And so, of course, he doesn't have 100% approval or rallying behind him. But this whole thing goes down, and like you said, Bela chases him with Moondancer, which is like, I think, like one of my favorite names for any dragon
10 out of
in
10
the
name.
show.
Yeah.
Moondancer, 10 out of 10 name. I think what's his sister's name? Bela and Reyna.
Raina.
Bela and Reyna. I think Reyna's dragon's name is Morning. I think that's a cool name for a dragon too, because it's like, I don't know, they just got, the black girls got really cool dragon names. But they come to this thing, and like you said, Bela could have killed them, but it was almost like a just a show of strength. You know what I mean? Like Bela, I think, has been, I, as far as Reyna too, I think they have been kind of like inking, or they have been waiting and anticipating a moment to like show some power, because they are Targaryens as well. They have some fire within them, but they never really get a chance to use it, and that's why Reyna is like super mad. Like, oh, you gonna send me with the kids? I have a dragon too. You gonna send me with the kids? But again, Bela is actually able to kind of show some of that strength here, and to scare everybody back, and eventually, of course, Kristen saves Gawain, right, from from Bela. But it's I don't know. It's a really cool moment to me because it's like, shoot, they kids, but they got dragons. You may be the craziest knight out here. You and Gawain. Gawain's supposed to be a good knight too. Y'all might be the craziest knights out here. Y'all may be very thoughtful, strategic, but they got dragons. You got to think different. So I really like that moment, man. I thought it was cool, but I can't wait till whatever happens to Kristen. I feel like he has to die by a dragon. I don't know what's gonna happen to him. He got to die by a dragon or something. I don't know how he dies, but I know it's gonna be satisfying when it happens. At least I hope so.
To the dragon point, we should talk about that too, though, because it was a show of strength and possibly even intimidation, but I think also some, I guess, reluctance on the part of Bela, because when a dragon is utilized in this world, that is really, really bad. Like that is, it's a nuclear option. It's where shit really, really hits the fan. We've already seen what happens when dragons are utilized. Like Lucerys
Yeah.
died at the end of season 1 at the hands of Aemon because of a dragon duel, and now we've set off a chain of events that we've yet to come back from. And throughout this entire episode, we hear people agitating for the use of dragons, agitating Rhaenyra, like, we have dragons, bro. Let's use them. What do you think about the significance of that? That, you know, again, like dragons in this world are just hell on earth in essence. And for Game of Thrones, the original series, like we went so long without them, they just weren't a factor, you know. And by the time they came into the show, we saw how destructive they would be. But in this show, dragons are obviously an active part of this world. They're in abundance out here. But at the same time, like, yes, we have them, and yes, they can single-handedly just determine the war. They still cannot be controlled. And that's been an idea that's also reinforced. Like, they're dragons at the end of the day. Like, let's not forget that. And I think Rhaenys also had a moment when she was talking to Rhaenyra earlier in this episode, like, yeah, you know, you should probably go talk to Alicent, make one more plea, because if dragons just become the war, then there's no rules. We can't really control them. Like, this can get really, really crazy, really, really fast. And so how would you connect that moment, you know, with I think Bela maybe showing a little bit of reluctance to just like the larger theme of how destructive these dragons can truly be when they're unleashed?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a ton to that. And like you said, they can sometimes be unpredictable. And that's how we got here with the death of Jacaerys, you know, from Aemon. Is like, Aemon was not trying to kill Jacaerys at all. He was trying to intimidate him, scare him a little bit, but ultimately it was his uncontrollable dragon that ended up, you know, killing him. And now we got, whose dragon was it? Viserys' dragon is just out here flying willy-nilly, like don't know what's going on. Either he's sad and depressed and lonely, we don't know, but he's just doing flips. He's just kind of doing flips in the air, like, because he has nothing to do, and he's bored. But I think all of the power of these dragons also does kind of speak to the show and the chaos of everything going down. You know, is a really cool point, I think, with what's his name, Sir Strong, who Damon just met in the Strong Core, whatever. Yeah, and they're trying to figure out. He asked him about the what's the battle of Bracken and Blackwood. He's asking him about the Bracken and Blackwood feud, right? And he kind of responds like, well, we don't really know 100% everything what happened to them, and that really does speak, I think, to the future of the Dance of the Dragons. By the time we get to Game of Thrones, everybody just knows kind of it went down. Nobody knows what the first thing that happened was, the second thing, what led up to the events completely. We're watching in real time, it's House of the Dragon, but once it gets to that point, history is kind of lost. And I think that chaos with the dragons is kind of that similar idea of like, all this is about to get muddled up in the strength of these dragons, but also it's like the concept of fire is also burning things, and things not being nothing being left behind but ash. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. So I think it's all really cool themes, I think, being played with there, and in the chaos of how these dragons operate. It's going to be scary, but it's also going to be very important, I think.
Yeah, I often equate dragons in the world of Westeros and Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon to nuclear war. You know, I think dragons in this universe are the atomic bomb, and that's what we deal with in real society. Like, this all feels very akin to Oppenheimer. And in Oppenheimer, you know, that movie, there's a moment where they're fearful that the testing of the atomic bomb is going to set off a chain reaction and potentially destroy the world. Well, not only are they literally fearful of that, it's also a metaphor for the atomic bomb itself. The fact that, well,
Hmm.
once you create something like this, there's no going back. People are just going to build bigger, more powerful, more destructive bombs. And that's the
Right.
same exact thing here with the dragons themselves. There's dragons, there's bigger dragons, and we have the ability to create more dragons. There's even, like, in some of these previews for future episodes, there's eggs being hatched to create more dragons to give the upper hand to the Targaryens and to the, to Team Black. And so
Hmm.
that's just one more thing where it's like, yo, this is the worst thing that could happen, because if we just allow this to turn into a war of dragons, the dance of dragons, obviously, then there's no saving humanity. Like, that is like
Hmm.
the worst shit ever that could happen, where dragons are just unleashed, literally burning this world to ash, and possibly, creating an extinction level event. And yeah, we deal with that with the atomic bomb. So, I think it's going to be just very much one of those things that they continue to just like harp on. But as we sort of know, and I think we can see, the powers that are at play, the forces that are at play, they're so strong and they're so pervasive and
Yeah.
they're so unrelenting in just like utilizing, what would be something that is just considered, again, just like a weapon of mass destruction to basically get the upper hand. It's going to be a pretty fearful day when that day does come. Before we wrap up here, any other small things about the episode, other characters that you want to mention, just other movements or things that occurred this week that you would want to point out?
I don't think so, man. Again, this was a pretty straightforward episode. I'll always say, just keep paying attention to the kids. Rhaenyra sent off pretty much her whole family somewhere else. And Rhaena is meant to look over both her and Damon's kids, and all these dragon eggs that are to be again stored away somewhere. So I'll just say, keep paying attention to them, man. I think they're always such an important part of the story.
Just want to quickly mention Eric and Arik, who were buried side by side, which I don't know about y'all. I'm not a twin, but I would definitely want my own grave. I'm just gonna put that out there. I know they love each other, but give me my own grave. But man, those bodies, that scene at the beginning of the episode, to see them buried, but then you see just like the countless numbers of bodies at the
Hmm.
at the battle, it was pretty horrific. Just I think, again, just sort of foretelling what's going to be ahead here. Just like the countless lives that are lost at the hands of some, I mean, just a lot of stupid shit that just goes down. It's just like, why did they die? Did they have to really die like that? That was just so unnecessary.
Hmm.
And they clearly didn't want to kill each other, but they did so out of duty. They did so out of fulfilling their duty and
Right.
what they felt like their obligations were. It just, again, sort of recalls to, I think, the movements of a lot of these characters. They were a couple of the men who, they're not bloodthirsty. They just really believed in following orders and living up to their responsibilities as members of the Knights Guard. This wasn't something that they
Hmm.
wanted to necessarily influence and put in motion. It's like they were just, they were doing what they felt like was their duty. And
Right.
unfortunately, at the hands of some pretty incapable people like Kristen Cole, they lost their lives because of it. But very, very affecting scene. But folks, those are all of our thoughts on the most recent episode of House of the Dragon. Of course, we'll be back next week to talk about episode 4 of the Game of Thrones prequel series. If you have any thoughts on this most recent episode, definitely hit us up and let us know what you think.